Hi, I am Brent Feldman, and we are back with another episode of Mix and Matchbox. Today, I am joined by Alex Kinkade. He is the marketing manager for StreamTech Engineering. We've actually been working with Alex for quite a while now, quite a few years, actually even 10, which is crazy to say, but really had a long, great relationship working with Alex. So he's here to join us today. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. 10
Definitely.
years makes me feel old. So
I know. I'm sorry. I when you put a
we are
decade
getting
number
old.
on it. But that just means we're ever closer because of
There you
it. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast, and hopefully we can dig right in. But I know the story, but for anybody else, what's the kind of backstory on how you came to work in your current position?
go. Yeah. So out of school, graduated with a communication degree. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, as I still probably don't. But I started working in marketing. Worked at a bank, and then from there, everywhere else I've been is in some sort of a manufacturing capacity of some custom equipment. So it was Duke Manufacturing. It was a drive-through equipment company, and then Duke Manufacturing, um, PRI, custom equipment for pharmaceutical research facilities, and then here at StreamTech. So we do e-commerce automation equipment, and it's a lot of fun. So
Cool. Well, you've seen a lot being, kind of with multiple companies and providing, basically in-house marketing support, being on in-house marketing teams. What makes a good fit for this position, in terms of like, being, the in-house marketer? What makes a bad fit?
yeah, I think that I think that being an in-house marketing person, you get to see more of the business than Brent sees and the agency sees. So I spend a lot of time learning from our engineering team. I've found a lot of success with spending time asking dumb questions to the people who make the equipment. Uh, why does it work this way? Why don't we try having this feature? Um, and sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. Um, one of our engineers here said recently that when I'm in a meeting, like I'm going to join the meeting, ask a bunch of really great questions, and then like slowly back away, disrupt everything, and then slowly back away. And he said I like that about you, so maybe it's a good thing. But at
I,
first, I did not think it was a compliment.
I imagine Homer backing into the bushes,
Right? Like,
yeah, the
okay, see
meme.
you later.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think I've seen a lot of different. I've seen marketing people in different industries and capacities on LinkedIn, kind of sharing different things, and you see tips and things to do. And I don't know. I just sometimes I feel like we overcomplicate things. If you know your product and you know your people that buy it, you're going to do a lot better. I don't
Cool.
know how to explain it, but
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, just being curious, I guess, yeah, you mentioned like asking a lot of questions. I feel like that's the fun kind of like how it works kind of, situation.
yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, I know obviously you're, working with us as an agency. How would you say that you make the most out of an agency partnership? Because obviously, like throughout the years, throughout different companies you've been at, like yeah, agencies kind of play a key role in providing services that the in-house team can't. But yeah, are there any kind of keys to making sure that you've got the right agency and then you're getting the most out of it?
You bet. Yeah, I think that over the years, what I've found is a good agency is willing to collaborate. Um, I rely on agency partners who are able to provide ideas that I didn't come up with. and didn't ask for. And you don't take them all, but at least they're willing to collaborate with you, as opposed to, you know, I was on a photo shoot last week, and my videographer was telling me, you know, a lot of the times we get on these shoots and people tell us, well, the negative space needs to be on the left or the right, and you know, I want this angle and all this. And I was like, I'm so glad that I don't have to tell you those things. Like, I just tell you the goal and you pull it off. And you know, it would frustrate me so much to have to do that. You know, and I for shots that I need a specific angle of something, you know, I can get a DSLR out and shoot it for the site myself. But for the most part, relying on partners who can collaborate is really beneficial. I've also found that folks that do a lot of listening and asking a lot of questions is really good. But you guys do that really well. We'll be in a meeting and it'll be like, hey, well, what about this thing? How does this work? And how does this relationship work? And, oh, it's a good question. I didn't think of that, you know? So yeah, the asking questions and learning is important too, as opposed to coming with like a know-it-all attitude, like we're ready to provide all the answers for you.
Yeah.
It's annoying as a in-house person, because you're like, I think I know our business really well.
Yeah. But, all right. Well, cool. Yeah. I'll plant that in my memory as what not to do. But
I don't think you do
that. Thanks. But I totally I really get that, you know, as far as like, you know, like having somebody who shows a unique, you know, and actual genuine interest in like, you know, what's going on, trying to learn about it. That's really cool. And the collaboration aspect. And then also, yeah, you mentioned like being kind of like just when you're in charge of something, just doing your job to the fullest, not having to like, you know, use you for everything. And I feel like that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess what would you say in your current role or in general, do you feel like is like a responsibility to the company and the leadership? You know, like what's your kind of your mission at the end of the day being in marketing for a company?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think to leadership and maybe to the rest of the company, one of the things that is fun for me is to be able to do a really good job of highlighting the work that everyone does. I mean, I feel like my role, I mean, not me specifically, but marketing's role, maybe me specifically here, but marketing's role is to make them look good. I mean, the rest of the team executes the projects and makes the equipment and has the relationships with the customer. Your job is to highlight how great of a job they do, and they appreciate it when you do a good job with that. Like these case studies we put together, ultimately we interview the customer, ask them why they like doing what they do, and tell a little story. And our team loves it because they're like, wow, that's cool. That equipment we built for them has a purpose, and I contributed to that. And so if you're kind of representing these people's hard work, and so I think that's important. But yeah, and I think to leadership, you know, obviously they're looking for like sales and performance and all that. But I think if you manage their brand well, people respect that a lot. So
totally. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you know, and that's cool. You're oh boy, I hope this doesn't get the wrong you know, sort of perception, but like, you know, the cheerleader for the organization, you know, propping up all the really, you know, sort of good things about it. And yeah, and then propelling sales forward. You also on the side, you know, messaged me about that post on LinkedIn about people, you know, maligning, you know, it being really, really disappointed about having to do so many things for the sales team. But I think you had some really good points about, you know, how it's you know, that synergy is really healthy, you know, like right. And it was funny, right after that I talked to somebody else and they were just talking about, wow, when you have a good partnership between marketing and sales, it works together so well.
Yeah. I saw something, yeah, like you said on LinkedIn. They were like, you know, you don't. It was like 6 tips on how to prevent yourself from becoming a sales support staff. And I was like, yeah, I get the gist, and I sympathize with the general concept and the problem that you don't want to be the person that's like, I'm the slide person and I just make slides all day for the sales team. But at the same time, when here, what I've found is if I know exactly what the sales guys are working on, and I know the questions that the client asks, or the prospect, I'm trying to do a better job with my terminology. Prospect, they're not a client yet. The prospect asks, then you're going to do a better job of marketing it. And then if they ask you for a slide deck, you should make the coolest freaking slide deck that you possibly can and say, here's a template. And if they ask, well, we're missing a slide, I need this thing that explains this particular thing. Take it upon yourself to like figure that out. Because I think there's some wins there. And if they ask for a proposal template, do the same thing. Make a proposal. Put yourself in their shoes. As opposed to like, oh, I'm just going to focus on the top of our funnel and I'm going to just generate leads and pummel these guys with leads. How about help them sell it? Like, what about the bottom part of your funnel when they're just about to buy? Those are the people that care a lot about how your company is perceived because they're about to buy some equipment from you or something, in our case, equipment. But
Yeah. Oh, that's totally cool. Yeah. How could you participate in actually being an assist on a sale? You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get the idea. You don't want to become like sales support. That's just, hey, write this proposal. But you definitely should take the time to give them the tools. And if you put yourself in their shoes, you might find, one of the things recently we developed a new slide template. I know it seems silly, but it was helpful for me because it was like, okay, well, here's something that I want to explain, that I want our sales guys to explain to the customer. We need a slide on that, and I need a graphic for that. So I should make a graphic. And it was like, wow, I should use that graphic on the website. So it just sort of, it works.
That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, actually kind of speaking of like tools, decks, all those sort of things, like I'm sure it's easy to get overwhelmed, with all the things sort of like in your view, but especially with tools, like, finding your area of focus, how best to communicate your value to leadership, especially when you're maybe the only one in that position, how, and not that you have to, or that, your leadership is asking you to continually kind of like justify, what that is or where your value is at. But, do you have any sort of tips on basically on doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. For the business we're in here, it may just be a matter of tagging the leads and the opportunities. So when we sell something, I can say, in our business, a sale could be anywhere from like $150,000 to, a couple million. So it's not fair to say, well, we sold this $150,000 thing and that was from a web lead. And so all the money we spent on the website, we just covered it. That's kind of not fair. But if you point to a couple of them, it's pretty fair. Because the argument can be made that, well, we would have had a website anyway, and people find us somehow anyway. But yeah, but there's like 6 of them in the quarter. I think there's a trend. I mean, if you can tag them, the other thing, I'll just run we do our budget checks and we make sure that we're following some sort of a thumb rule on the year. If we spend a lot of money on a trade show, we need to point to a quantity of leads from that, and then how many of them did we sell? And if they didn't make a sale, then you justify it based on, we weren't there. Would people just assume we died? Yeah. Some of it's just practicality, but
No, that makes sense. And I mean, like helping, because like I feel like the ROI thing, you put marketing into a pile, and if you aren't justifying, like, where it's going or why,
Mhm.
then, it helps create more suspicion on like, okay, I know we're doing things, but does it really
Yeah,
matter? And I guess we're lucky we live in a world now where things are trackable and traceable. But that's cool. You kind of help really prove why what you're doing on the marketing side actually means something to the bottom line at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I would, I would, unless your business what am I trying to say? In the capital equipment business, which it's kind of where I've been through my career. If I wouldn't suggest you should track how many likes you get on every LinkedIn post and how many followers you got last week versus the prior week. Um, it's nice every now and again to say, hey, last year in April we had, 400 followers, and this year in April we have 600. Cool. We grew by a lot. Um, that's helpful. As opposed to every month I give a report on exactly how many followers we have. Same thing with like SEO and SEO um, and traffic, web traffic. I don't run a report every month on this is how many searches we're appearing in and this is how much traffic the site is getting, because what happens if it goes up and then down and then like what does it mean? If you say that it went down, then you need to explain why it matters
Mm-hmm.
to the management. That's their next question, is like, well, why do I need to care about it? And if you give them too much data all the time, they're never going to care about your data. So
Yeah.
give them the things that are relevant to them. Um,
You could track your rank on a day-to-day basis, but it's like watching the stock market, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And most of the days, as long as you're putting the right things in place, you'll have good days. Obviously, you'll have bad days, but
yeah,
yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes I feel like people get lost in like, oh, I need to know this. Like, but why? And how
yeah,
often do you need to know that? Sure, yeah, long-term growth. We want to see it charted over a period of time, but wow, I'm totally with you on not
yeah.
being overly, you don't need to inspect it every second.
No. And the other thing as an in-house marketer that I think agencies probably don't realize is that like we look at other things that agencies wouldn't have a clue or wouldn't even notice or wouldn't know about. Like um, at our business, we identified an area with the service and support department where it's like this is a new area of growth we can focus on, and we're making strides to put additional dedicated resources into that. Not only just for the sake of helping the customer, but as a revenue stream. Um, and so it's like, oh, I'm going to run a report on how well we did in search this month, as opposed to that, I'm going to spend my time evaluating an area of the business that's unrelated to marketing because I see that it needs help. And it is related to the customer experience. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's cool. And it's interesting because like we've been like kind of treading on this like in the last two questions really, but maybe even the last three. But like the lines between sales and marketing sometimes get fuzzy, and obviously there's just there's plenty of overlap. And you've mentioned a couple of things like being just helpful, curious, and I feel like those are extraordinarily good tips, because like obviously people can let their maybe preconceived notion about what sales is there to do get in their way. But I guess what's your perception on how these two kind of areas of a company can function well together, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. Here specifically, I've been able to embed myself deeply within that organization. So, one of the things that I would suggest and maybe this is a challenge, maybe I'm offering a challenge to other marketing folks. Dare I say, I feel like I'm not qualified to do that, but But like if you get a web lead, maybe you try the initial pitch. Like you say, hey, thank you so much, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, for joining, for submitting this web lead, and for your interest in our company. When are you available? Let's get on an initial call. I'll take the initial call and bring my salesperson with me, and I'll deliver the initial slide deck myself. Challenge yourself, try it. And like, you should be one of the best salespeople in your organization, not from a technical perspective, but from a communicating your value, communicating why the equipment, how the equipment works, or the systems, or the product, or in our instance, it's capital equipment, so we do a lot of explaining. But you should be able to walk through with a customer and not be scared away. Like, oh, I got a lead, who's going to take it? Same thing goes for podcasts and speaking opportunities. I never thought I would say this, but like, here I've been challenged by leadership. Like, hey, we got an invite for this industry podcast. I think you should try it. And I was like, I should try it. Okay. That sounds scary. I am not a subject matter expert, but you will become one if you try. And so I've been challenged to do that, and it works out. I mean, you learn it and it works out. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's great advice. And I think it's, you had mentioned before about like, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, about like, just try to understand where they're coming from, especially on the pitch aspect. Because sales can be, rough and a slog, but it can also be really exciting and interesting too. And as a marketer, there is a pseudo sales aspect to it. Obviously, you're trying to like generate business and leads, but to take that leap of faith and, believe in yourself that you can actually, represent the company just as well as anybody else could is definitely that. I think that's a cool challenge. Actually, that's really neat.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things the reason that I started in that way here is just like, okay, we got a web lead. I know my sales guys are tied up. Heck, why don't I try and take the initial call, and then I'll slowly, like the Homer Simpson, I'll back into the bushes later, and we do that. So I'll take the initial call, explain all of our systems, and explain what we do, how we work, and then thank you so much. Your applications engineer is going to be, and give them a person.
Yeah.
He will work with you the rest of the way, and good luck.
There's there's so much you could learn. I mean, like by being able to do that. So.
Well, then the sales guy doesn't have a cold lead; they have a warm lead who's at least already had the pitch. And especially in our industry, the folks that are in the sales roles are engineers, and so engineers don't really like doing that anyway. So you're kind of they're like, thank you, thanks for doing that. Now I can work on engineering the solution, which is what I prefer to do anyway. So
yeah. Oh, that's super cool. I really like that. Being the kind of like frontline for marketing initiatives, how do you handle on pushing back on poor ideas, maybe issued sometimes? And this is not to point fingers at anybody, at the company, but, I'm sure obviously throughout any experience you've had, I'm sure you've run into this. And, I'll ask that first, and then I'll ask the second part. I want to ask it both together, but it'll get too muddy. So anyway, yeah. How do you push back on poor ideas?
That's a good question. I have to think about it for a second. Poor ideas. I think asking the why, like driving down into the why. Why did you provide this suggestion here? There's probably something greater on their mind, as opposed to, I had it many years ago at a different company, had somebody say, "Oh, that's my light. Hold on, our lights go off."
All good. You're saving the planet little by little. It's fine.
Yeah. Many years ago, I had somebody at a different company that said, "Hey, we should have like models in our booth at this show. And I was like, oh, well, wait a second. I think that's not something I want to be a part of. I don't think that that relates to our business in any way. And I don't understand what is driving this idea. And it was just, the idea was they wanted foot traffic in the booth. And I'm like, well, we can work on that. We can work on foot traffic and visibility. That's wild. That's a weird idea and not a good one.
Yeah.
So I'd suggest just driving to there's a why behind it.
That's a really good point. There's this book I was listening to. I can't say reading. It was an audiobook, but it was called Never Split the Difference, about like negotiating. And actually, I'm glad that you said that, because it was just like, to understand will help you understand where that person is coming from. And then if you do have objection to it, then you can answer what they're looking for with better clarity. Because oh boy, yeah, I know, like, models. Are you sure?
No.
Okay. Well, second part of the question was, how do you protect, the integrity for your marketing initiatives, so that, once they are born from your brain, making sure they don't get, sort of sullied. And that's not to say that, you're a protectionist of your ideas, or that, only what you say can go. But, obviously, as you want to see something be successful, you do have to be somewhat protective over making sure it doesn't be like, well, I think we should, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an idea that you might have could then, it could go a couple different ways. It could get shot down, or they could say, oh, that video idea that you had was great. Why don't we hire a dedicated personality and we'll do a daily video series? And it's like, whoa, I just had, like, it could go no, or it could go, let's take it to the furthest nth degree. And you're like, okay, let's stay in the initial, lane here. That's a good question, though. I think once you start down a path, initially with any sort of marketing initiative, it's gonna cost some. It may or may not cost some money. It may or may not cost an investment in time and effort. It may or may not be successful in the first try. But if you show that you have a plan and you're working the plan, and you show that you have data to demonstrate where we are on the plan, then you're more likely to see it through fruition. So, we're doing this effort. It's not something that we're just picking off of a random wall. We've got this content plan, and we're going to follow through with that. With this, we've investigated this series of topics due to the research we found on search. And so, if you just say we have a plan and we have a path forward, I found that's successful.
That's great. Absolutely wonderful advice. Cool. As you begin to learn an organization, and as you mentioned, you've been at multiple manufacturing companies and even experience before that. But do you have a recommendation for documentation or other things that can help, besides just talking to subject matter experts, sales or leadership, that could help other companies on board in your sort of arena easier? Because I'm sure you've had to do it before.
Yeah. If you're referring to like specifically marketing material, like all of your existing literature and materials that you would use for your customers is great for training your employees. If that's what you're referring to, like onboarding new people, I will run through. At a prior company, I found this to be extremely important. We were going through a lot of hiring, and so they had a very programmatic onboarding process for everyone. They would go to every department over the course of like the first week. They wouldn't really do any work yet. And I think the person, like, to be fair, the person being onboarded got tired of that. After the first week, they're like, I'm so glad that I get to actually do my work now. But it was helpful. And so what I've done I make a point of when we have new people, I just schedule a meeting with them, whether it's asked for by HR or not. Hey, I see that, you know, this new person here started Monday. It's, you know, Wednesday. Give them a couple days. It's Wednesday or Thursday. I'm going to schedule a meeting with them and just walk through all of our products, walk through various maybe competitors if that's applicable to you, or partners that you might work with and why you work with that partner over a different one, and just give them an overview slide deck of what you would with your customer. There's nothing. It may not be revolutionary to them, but what I have found is that they're like, thank you so much for explaining that. I had no idea why we sold that thing. Or you might find that they're like, I went to our website and some of it was clear, but some of it I didn't quite get. And I'm like, wow, wonder why. Maybe I should do better like at communicating than if you didn't understand it and you work here, then our prospects probably don't either. But
yeah, that's
anyway.
actually, that's really cool because they are getting fresh eyes on some of the things that you see all the time. And so, yeah, even as you try to pitch it or present it, you're going to get those questions that can hopefully help you make those things better. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I guess, you know, obviously throughout the, you know, experiences you've had, I'm sure good lessons, bad lessons, things that are tough, things that are easy. What is the hardest lesson that you feel like you've had to learn by, you know, doing internal marketing?
One lesson that I'd say that I learned is that when you dive into something that's really expensive, and going to take a lot of time, be prepared to possibly, like, be prepared to, like, you're committed. I'm 100% committed, because if you think that you're going to back out of it later, then you're admitting, like, if you say, I'm gonna, you know, we're 8 months in, we're almost done with this big website redesign, and I've got other priorities coming in my way. I got people asking why we're committed to this. Get it done, or you're gonna, or it will be a failure. Like, it will be a problem and a mistake, and then you won't be trusted with the next big idea that you have. But
cool.
if you're committed to something, be committed to it all the way.
Yeah.
Regardless if it takes you extra hours at night. If you're like, okay, website launches in 2 weeks, and I've been putting off all these other projects that people keep asking me to work on because I told them I was going to do this. I'm going to be working nights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get it done.
That's solid. Yeah, because like as you bring, you know, your kind of job is to bring these ideas and stuff into the organization. And if you don't see them to fruition, yeah, then it does. It reflects on you internally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I think if you give, you know, the other things that come to mind are like pitfalls that people fall into. And maybe I'm a little different. Maybe one of those, you know, unicorn weirdos that does additional things that other people don't. But, you know, I do some graphic design. I'm capable in some of the Adobe programs. I am not a UI UX expert, but if we need literature put together and some basic graphics, I can do that. I would say that some marketers fail when they don't do anything. Like, you don't actually do. I have a agency for this, and this, and it's like, well, what do you do then? I'd say outsourcing everything is a mistake. I have steered away from focusing our efforts on advertising everywhere that I've been. I'm not a big fan of advertising without a purpose. That's why I like SEO, because it's not advertising, and then once you invest the money and time, it sticks. Whereas an ad disappears as soon as you stop spending money. But spending all your time devoting to cool advertising campaigns, unless you're selling like sunglasses, I would say is a mistake. Um, what else comes to mind?
Those are all really good. Those are super solid. I I in general, I feel like it is. It's sometimes one of those things where you gotta pick your battles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um so for you, the last one I have here, it's another combo question, but I'm gonna try to I'll try to not make it a combo question. I have a real habit and an issue with myself making combo questions, but um, you know, for you, is there a common distraction that you feel like that this position has that people may get caught up in? And I feel like you mentioned a really good one, in a response to the last one, of kind of like, yeah, outsourcing everything, not having your hands in the work, and then you just become a coordinator, glorified product manager or something at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So like I feel like that's potentially really good. But yeah, any other sort of like common tropes of like, yeah, just like distractions that people get caught up
Yeah.
in an in-house marketing position?
I would say one of them would be just, I'm going to spend all my time analyzing data. I'm going to spend all my time running segmented reports of every little piece of our business. And oh, well, look, this little piece of our business over here is changing. It changed this last week. And so I'm going to try and focus on that thing. And like, you don't need 17 reports to upper management all the time, providing them with the latest and greatest stats, and vice versa. You don't need to, unless your business is extremely complex, like you work for GM. I imagine there's probably some more complexity than what I do here, but you don't need to slice and dice the CRM system a cajillion different ways. You should be able to look at your pipeline and see. You should be familiar with the names of the companies that are in your pipeline. Shocker. You should know the names of the people that are in there, and you should be like, oh, wonder what happened to that particular one, because you should be able to see things moving forward and know generally where you stand and why. When you see that you're working well with your direct business versus your reseller business versus your other partners, why all the things at the end of the pipeline are about to sell are from a different segment of the business. That's important, but you shouldn't have to slice it a bajillion different ways just to find out what I'm going to work on today.
Yeah. I feel like people chase rabbits probably pretty easily, and I mean, like that could happen generally anywhere. But yeah, I feel you on the making sure like that you've got your bases covered, because if you don't have kind of like the groundwork, yeah, anybody can get like enamored by data and want to be like, oh my god, yeah, what is this? But yeah, if you don't have some of the brass tacks kind of like locked down, then yeah, you're losing focus on what the position's all about.
Yeah, I think if you're running an apparel business and it's direct to consumer, I'm talking a different language. That's probably, you need to focus on every little aspect of that e-com site. But for most businesses, or for capital equipment specifically, I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah.
If you provide a set of services or products that are a little more B2B, that cost a little more money, then you don't need to look at every little metric like that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I feel like sometimes people get too lost in the details.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. That is all the questions I have for you. And I really like, I honestly, I really appreciate all like your responses. I feel like there's a lot of good nuggets, and especially I got to say the best thing I really am walking away with this is the challenge to people that they might want to step in somebody else's shoes, and especially sales for a point in time, and try doing a pitch, because it's hard, but you'll learn something about yourself and the customer, about and it's not hard to do, but it's kind of believing in yourself that you can do it. But
Mhm.
Yeah, it was really neat. Very insightful. I really appreciate it. Thanks for
Thanks.
being on the podcast, Alex.
Well, you do. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. You do pitches all the time for Matchbox. So, as the guy who does that, you probably have an appreciation for it being a little bit challenging. And yeah,
I am one of those weirdos on the other side of things where I'm like, you appreciate the challenge for it being exciting. Like, what am I going to get today? What what kind of question is going to catch me off guard that I'm going to have an interesting, and compelling and exciting response to?
right.
But also I feel like that is the joy of kind of navigating that stuff, that you like learn all those things of like where you have blind spots yourself, even about like, the things that you're supposed to know so well. It's about filling in those gaps and just doing better the next time. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do. I have a deep appreciation for it myself, and kudos to you for trying it too.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, and definitely, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me. And
Definitely.
thanks for being a great agency that I've worked with many years. And every time I get a chance, I'm going to call your number. So
Well,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Yeah, it means a lot. And Alex, you've been a great partner, a great person to work with over the years too. So I appreciate it as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, this has been another episode of Mix and Matchbox. I'm your host, Brent Feldman, and we will be back soon with more content. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.